Baphomet, SJW Demon. This is part of the Gail series, and this was when Gail met with Buddha and the goddess Lakshmi, and they helped her solve a problem about a very unusual creature in her vagina. Baphomet has strong abilities to influence the mind. Unlike Satan, he doesn't use words. He uses impressions and ideas. One way to repel demonic influences is to walk to the nearest coffee shop or local park and enjoy a cup of tea. One must relax and focus on your environment, clear your thoughts of the past or future, and simply stay present. The most important part is not the tea itself, but the ritual around it. You have to enjoy it outside the home, in a relaxing space like a cafe or a park. You must clear your mind when you do this and mindfully focus on what's going on around you, Buddha said to Gail. Baphomet caused Gail to obsess over the impression Baphomet gave Gail that made Jesus sweat a little in his coma and caused Jesus' pulse to get a little thready. For Gail to leave her home would have been especially important in April 2022, since Gail associated her apartment with Jesus at that time, because Jesus had been a roommate there with Gail from late January to late March 2022. Gail never felt like she belonged anywhere, so growing up she wore different pairs of shoes. The charming, extroverted teenage girl, because Mom always said Gail was boring. The perfect church wife. The hot playgirl of hot men, INFP. The Save the Cat writer, the polyamorous demisexual, aromantic asexual like Jesus, etc. None of these were really her. They were kinda close to her, and so whatever parts of her aligned with the category, she identified with those parts and embraced them and said they were her. But in the process of doing so, she negated those parts of her that didn't fit the label or group she aligned with, for fear that those parts would be unacceptable or not cool or not great enough to compensate for whatever feelings of inadequacy or non-acceptability plagued her. It all started from a childhood where her narcissist mother berated her day in and day out, so that in elementary school she never breathed a word for fear that anything that came out of her mouth would be unacceptable. At home, the unacceptable word or look meant a stinging slap to her face and a threat to be thrown out on the streets and a long tirade about her ugliness and unworthiness inside and out that justified the crazy tirade. Gail could never predict when her mother's tirades would happen, so she concluded that no matter what she did, it was useless. She must be garbage, that the tirades happened no matter what she did. Whenever anybody or anything or any group made her feel less than garbage, she clutched onto that like a drowning person who finally got a lifeboat to climb into to save herself from drowning. Whatever lifeboat got her out of the churning waters would become her new identity and focus. When she accepted Christ as her Savior in 1971, that lifeboat saved her from the churning waters of being the boring, shy, non-charming girl. So, knowing the all-important and obviously superior Christ loved her faults and all, she now felt capable of the extroversion charming girl performance. To hell with her mother's assessment that she was the boring, shy girl. But Mom moved out of Oxnard, California, and back to Florida to save her religious nut daughter from being a religious nut. That was 10th grade at Miami Palmetto Senior High when Gail put on the charming girl performance. She practically memorized the Lerner and Loewe musical Gigi, adulating the main character Gigi, striving to be like her, even wanting to decorate her bedroom with Parisian furniture. This all ended when she couldn't get the 1973 world to align with turn-of-the-century Paris, where she was the darling courtesan Gigi and was surrounded by charm and beauty, at a party she sponsored at her home, where the party-goers littered her mom's red shaggy carpet with their disgusting, uncharming cigarette butts, and some gross guy danced with her, with his hands moving over her body in sensual and disgusting moves, obviously moving towards the bedroom. Nope, this performance was over. Her surroundings and friends didn't seem interested in being part of the Gigi crowd. Gail kept her virginity and refused to go any further. She was a 1-year-old born-again Christian at this time, and had forgotten her new identity as the church-going fanatic when her mom moved her away from California to save her crazy religious nut daughter from religious insanity. Now, back in Florida, she assumed the Gigi identity, but that didn't work at Miami Palmetto Senior High, full of hippies, in 1973, and reality intruded to remind Gail that she was far from Gigi and that her friends were far from Gigi's turn-of-the-century upper-class companions. Disgusted at herself for betraying Jesus, because with this new, hopefully charming Gigi group, Gail said to them that her becoming a Christian was a phase she went through and that she was over it. So, after the disgusting, revolting party, Gail rededicated her life to the Lord in the summer of 1973 and divorced herself from her vulgar cigarette-smoking and drinking, obviously non-Gigi crowd to belong now to the angelic and pure, perfect church wife crowd. This new identity appealed to Gail. When Gail was in her Gigi identity, she did refuse all cigarettes offered her, saying this wasn't her. Beer was too cheap for her Gigi image, so Gail didn't get into alcohol either. Wine, perhaps, but her high school friends obviously couldn't afford wine. After all, can you imagine charming Gigi smoking or drinking beer? A turn-of-the-century high-class girl like Gigi would never smoke or indulge in beer. Injuries from your childhood are hard to overcome. When Gail adopted the pure Victorian churchwife identity, she created a Jesus in her mind from her Bible teachings. He was a pure, sinless, all-knowing, perfect God who was equal to his dad, God the Father, in all respects, and most merciful, dying on the cross for the sins of mankind. Anything or anyone he approved of could disregard all human conventions and be right. So Gail went against the world, against what was popular, and this made her feel redeemed and better about herself. She was separate from the evil, sin-cursed world. Gail decided that the movement Jesus most approved of were the Fundamental Baptists, a very strict Baptist group that thoroughly condemned sex before marriage, adultery, drinking, rock music, and smoking. Only music like classical, with no sinful sexual lust beats, was acceptable. According to the culture of the West, the Fundamental Baptists would be considered very, very conservative. Gail prided herself on being the opposite of worldly and was separated from the world in her 20s. So separated, she strove to crucify any parts of herself that went against that separation. In her 20s, she stopped watching television, the news, and avoided the Hollywood cesspool like the plague. Brent Spiner, despite his fame and celebrity, wouldn't have stood a chance in hell of winning Gail in her 20s. He smoked. He had sex before marriage. He even once looked like a hippie. He would have been finished in Gail's eyes if he ever approached her for a relationship. He was also a sinful Hollywood actor. Gail prided herself on being like a Victorian woman in her values, and despised the liberal, loose, hippie values of her time. Long hair in men was considered a sin, and a woman should not wear the clothes of a man, nor a man the clothes of a woman. So in her 20s, Gail was the perfect church wife. She never wore pants, the clothes of a man, once she started attending the Fundamental Baptist College, Baptist University of America, 1979 to 1983, and strove to be like Agnes Wickfield from Charles Dickens' novel David Copperfield. Her role models were women like Agnes Wickfield, Maria Taylor, 19th century missionary to China, Hudson Taylor's wife, and those like them. She even turned down a possible commission as an Air Force officer to go to Bible college with only $20 on her after graduating with honors from Florida State University in 1979 with a degree in community health education, when Jesus seemed to indicate from her Wednesday midweek service at her church that he wanted her to do that. She read the Bible from cover to cover hundreds of times, and the strict Baptist group said the King James Bible was the best. She finally landed on this King James Bible only position after some exploration, which involved reading some lies by King James Bible only scholarly writer and university professor Gail Schuler. The lie was that the Bibles besides the King James Bible were translated from corrupt, satanic Roman Catholic texts, which was not true. Westcott and Hort, involved in the creation of the other manuscripts from which the other English Bibles outside of the King James Bible were translated, were not Roman Catholic, as liar Ripplinger said. But the leaders in Gail's adored new identity, the fundamental Baptists, would never lie about something so important, so she thought. This is the problem when you make idols out of people to feel better about yourself. Gail fell for this lie because her new husband, David Schuler, a secret pedophile, an avid churchgoer, and missionary-trained graduate of the Fundamental Baptist College, Baptist Bible College, Springfield, Missouri, convinced her this was true. Gail needed to have idols in her life, and by losing herself into her idols, she felt better about herself. Her idols and their teachings or practices would be her new identity. This would be a practice throughout her entire life. By losing herself into her ever-changing identities, she felt better about her many flaws. Some of her astute secular college friends noticed this about Gail as a teenager around 1978 and said, "Gail sure changes her mind a lot," but they belonged to the worldly Christian crowd, so their opinion was worldly, even sinful, to Gail. Whenever a crisis happened in Gail's life that shook her identity, how she saw herself, she would explore how to adjust her identity to come up with one that made her feel good about herself. So she changed her mind a lot while a student at Miami-Dade Community College, and most especially after she changed her college major from nursing to health education 1978 and 79. When her Florida State University nursing professor convinced her she was not nursing material. Whenever Gail discovered her identity wasn't working for her, she went into crisis mode, obsessively searching for a new identity to lose herself into. In her 20s, after abandoning the Nellie the Nurse identity from the movie South Pacific, her main reason for wanting to be a nurse, Gail pretty much solidified into the Victorian church wife identity, which seemed to be working for her, except she was having a hard time finding her Victorian dream husband. And David Schuler, who she married on April 20th, 1985, turned out to be a great disappointment. But didn't she ask Jesus to break up any relationship that wasn't his will? And she ended up married to David, so she concluded. It could only mean her flaws were so bad they couldn't be fixed, and she totally lost herself into her husband David as a codependent, concluding this was how to redeem herself. One of the hardest idols for her to abandon would be her incorrect concept of Jesus. Jesus was actually not equal to his dad until June 2022. Unfortunately, evangelical Christianity was incorrect in their teaching that Jesus was equal to his dad. In fact, they misinterpreted a lot of Bible passages that would cause problems for evangelical Christians. By the time Gail started writing Star Trek The Next Generation Data actor Brent Spiner in 1989, she was basically shooting at a long shot, writing the star to just be her real self with someone who she was safe with, because the celebrity obviously wouldn't read her letters, which made her feel safe with him. She did this in order to find a new identity when she wrote him, unhappy with the status quo. Gail just didn't know where to land. But she insisted that her identity exploration would be without sin, and so, when Brent propositioned her in June 1991, she turned him down, but said she adored him and wanted to remain his pen friend. She was pretty conflicted in the early 1990s, feeling guilty as hell that she, married to David Schuler, wanted to bed Brent Spiner so bad, and not sure how to reconcile this. She also felt bad she had to turn him down so that she could respect herself and not incur her idol Jesus' wrath, while she tried to figure out where to land for her identity, which was in a flux most of the 1990s. Now she was leading a double life, the perfect church wife outwardly and writing a Hollywood sinful star who said on the phone he wanted to rape her, and yet Brent seemed more virtuous than her husband David. Brent seemed more authentic, more caring, and amazingly more Christ-like than the Victorian man she thought she married. The real Gail had come out to Brent in her letters to him, because the real Gail was tired of being smothered, and Brent fell in love with the real Gail. Finally, when the Jesuits launched an avalanche of problems into Gail's life, attacking her health, her son, and her very life in the late 1990s, she had the courage to break free from the Victorian churchwife identity and divorced her by then obvious Jesuit agent husband David Schuler in spring 2001. Though Gail didn't have David completely figured out, she knew enough to know that Jesus wanted her to leave the marriage, and that was all she needed to know. Her new and improved identity would be out there somewhere. She'd find it with the help of her new idol, Brent Spiner. She would not learn David Schuler was a secret pedophile and had molested her son, Eric, until 2011. Gail's new identity would be the hot woman in waiting to be the possible hot and beautiful inside and out wife of a hot celebrity, almost the opposite of her previous identity as a Victorian church wife. Each identity had parts of the real Gail, and those parts that were like her she adopted with a relish. If parts of Gail didn't fit that identity, she denied that those parts of her existed. For the Victorian church wife identity, she denied her polyamory, her free spirit, and her open and tolerant accepting mind. For the charming high school girl Gigi identity, she denied her asexual leanings and her thoughtful and deep personality. Now, in her possible celebrity hot wife identity, 2002 to about 2022, she denied her asexual leanings mostly. The Jesuits wouldn't let her actually marry any of the hot guys in person, so she could get away with pretending like she didn't have any asexual leanings while they waited for her and made brain-to-brain love to her. You can fake sexual desire in the brain-to-brain servers while doing brain-to-brain love with your men, and her sexual desire wasn't always faked and was never faked with Brent Spiner. The biggest problem she had while in her hot Gail identity was that she still strove to lose herself into her new identity and became so good at her performances that she even convinced those in her new group that her performance was who she was. It didn't help that she even convinced herself that was who she was. You can be a good actress to others when you believe your own lies about yourself, believing you have to be those lies because you have an unhealthy need to be someone other than who you really are. Gail was making progress into growing into her true self, but one area where a lot of work needed to happen was her general tendency to believe that deep down she was worthless, which caused her to idolize those who became her role models and identify with them to the extreme, crucifying her true self in the process. Each identity Gail adopted had parts of her in them, and she would need to find those parts that were who she really was and keep them, and yet abandon parts of that identity or performance that were not her. This would be a challenging process for her, requiring her to be brutally honest about herself, requiring her to tell herself over and over that she didn't need to belong to anyone but herself, that who she was, whoever that was perfectly fine, and she didn't need to apologize for it to anyone, nor did she need to modify her true self for anyone. And she needed to stop wearing different pairs of shoes. She needed to meditate, find her true inner core, and live out that person she really was deep inside, and not allow any religion or movement to define her. Gail needed to follow her own star and not borrow other people's mantras, a religion, or an idol to find herself. Ironically, the deity Jesus seemed to have some of the same identity issues Gail had. But even when Gail learned Jesus was flawed, that is, until he actually and finally became infallible in June 2022 as pure existence, Gail still kept Jesus as one of her main idols. Gail's idols didn't need to be perfect. They just needed to be someone she respected and looked up to. Jesus would be at the top of the list. Gail always had a tendency to lose herself into her idols. This may seem fine and dandy if the idol was Jesus, right? But there was a problem. 2022 and afterwards has been a real challenge for idolatry-prone Gail. Jesus had been her idol since about 1971, when she became a born-again Christian. You might say, what was the problem with making an idol out of Jesus? Didn't he want to be worshipped? Nope, not anymore. Not pure existence Jesus. You see, Gail needed to be religious, to feel good about herself. She needed to lose herself into her new religions or shoes she wore, whatever they were, just to feel good about herself. It appears she was not alone. Did you know that the SJW movement is a religion? Yup, it's a religion of the demon Baphomet. Losing yourself into your religion, whatever it is, causes you to negate those parts of you that are really you because you want to belong to your religion to feel better about yourself. This is not healthy. The tricky thing about the SJW religion is you think you are being more authentic and therefore more healthy when you follow and honor SJW mantras and let them become your identity. But their mantras don't work because they aren't completely true. The SJW religion is as unhealthy a religion as is very conservative evangelical Christianity. Yup, you heard me right. Evangelical Christianity is not a healthy religion. Even Jesus would agree with that, which may be part of the reason he was doing his sex parties, to try and correct the unhealthy elements in evangelical Christianity, right before Satan almost took him out for good, March 26, 2022. The Hindu goddess Lakshmi, who Jesus greatly admires and loves as a friend, told Gail in May 2022 that she had never met a happy evangelical Christian. That's quite a statement, and this may have subconsciously inspired Gail to be an SJW after meeting up with Lakshmi in May 2022, with Gail not even realizing she was subconsciously driven to be an SJW. And Baphomet played on Gail's need to latch onto new identities when she was in a flux, which meant she didn't know who she was and was scared to find out, making her too eager to wear another pair of shoes that wasn't her. So Gail would go from one false identity to another to feel she belonged and was acceptable. She always needed an identity or label to hide her unacceptable and awful self under. Her mother's mantras still screamed in Gail's ears. All Gail did her whole life was change her shoes and become the new shoes she wore. She was too scared to go barefoot, like how the god Buddha often was. If you told Gail she was an SJW, she would vehemently deny this was the case. After all, she was only finding her true self and embracing that. But was she truly finding her true self? Baphomet and the SJWs convince you that that is exactly what you're doing when you embrace their SJW theology And that's how Baphomet suckers you in. Well, you say to yourself, Jesus found himself as an aromantic and asexual, so that seemed a cool identity to adopt. So Gail felt this might look good on her. If it was good enough for Jesus, it certainly was good enough for her. Yeah, but is it healthy to try and be someone you're not? And who is a label anyways? No way would I be a disgusting, stupid, and brain-dead SJW, Gail screamed in her head, while she justified embracing the asexual label. Yes, Gail has asexual tendencies, but she is not the label asexual. Okay, who was Gail's biggest idol? Yeah, you got it. Jesus. I guess it was okay to idolize Jesus when he was a deity. Most deities like having a following and like to be worshipped. The problem was Jesus was no longer a deity. You get that? Jesus was no longer a deity. Then who the hell was he? He was pure existence. What the hell was that? That was the problem. What the hell was that? Buddha tried to explain it to Gail in December 2022. When Jesus ascended, June 2022, he shed his shell as a deity, so to speak. He became all of existence. When you think of the universe as a human, you are probably imagining stars and planets. You can even probably imagine that there are multiple versions of such a universe with different stories playing out in each one. Jesus isn't merely the infinite multiverse. He is literally the vast backdrop that holds all of the infinite potentials of existence. He is both everything and nothing at the same time. Beneath Jesus are the universes, the galaxies, the planets. Beneath that are the deities with their religions or spiritual teachings, followed by the mortal humans, followed by the animals, then the plants and the insects. Jesus has technically been in existence for all of time, just like you and I in the eye of God. We are simply ever-increasing expansions of consciousness in the realm of existence, forever cycling like the waves of an ocean. Jesus is far above being a deity. A deity like myself has followers and a spiritual practice. When Jesus was a deity, he had followers and a religion which he called Christianity. He is now above all such things, above all of us. He no longer has a need for a religion, and in fact encompasses all of them, just like he is every atom in our bodies. Gail was getting hints about the new Jesus from a Discord hangout on September 22, 2023, where both Buddha, Jesus' best god friend, and the Hindu goddess Lakshmi showed up. Lakshmi was the goddess that teenage deity Jesus wanted to marry, but Lakshmi rejected him as a husband. However, Lakshmi remained a staunch friend to Jesus. Jesus, judging by his best god friends, was certainly nothing like how evangelical Christianity saw him. Rule 13, Gail's BFF and ex-Jesuit leader, a Japanese female Nazi who had the power to explode men's penises through the power of her mind, was there too. She was also ex-Antichrist Zack Knight's wife in a polyamorous relationship with Zack, where Zack had casual flings on the side, but kept 13 as his main woman and soulmate. Buddha handed Rule 13 some green tea for the hangout. "Buddha, can you check my chakras, please?" Rule 13 asked. Going into meditation, Buddha, the chakra master, scanned 13's chakras. Gail's supporters, Joshua J. Joshua, Brad, and 13, commented on how Goddess Lakshmi had no problem showing her breasts and nipples. "It is not sexual to show your breasts, just femininely powerful," monogamous Hindu goddess Lakshmi had told them. "I am the goddess of women and fertility." Buddha found a minor blockage in Rule 13's heart chakra. "I need to fix it," he said. 13 has a minor blockage, which could cause health problems or a feeling of being down. Rule 13 lifted her shirt, exposing her perfect tiny Japanese breasts. Gail's supporters gasped at the beauty of those exquisite, perfect breasts. Buddha placed his plump hands on 13's breast, causing Rule 13's heart chakra to glow and her breasts to vibrate. "They look like they might kiss," Joshua Gale's gay supporter said. Buddha's hand moved over 13's breasts to warm them as the breasts vibrated. Then he gave her breasts a little squeeze. After lifting his hands from her breasts, they perked up, and all commented on how perky they looked now. "You must practice more self-love," Buddha told 13. Rule 13 felt as good as new. "Gail-chan, would you like a chakra scan from Buddha?" Gail said she wanted Buddha to scan her now. Buddha meditated and scanned Gail. "Gail's main chakra, her root chakra, is blocked," Buddha said. "This is very interesting." Buddha's eyes indicated concentration as he meditated. He motioned for the goddess Lakshmi to assist him. "Help me to diagnose this," he asked Lakshmi. Lakshmi's soft eyes opened wide as she assisted Buddha. "Yes, Gail's root chakra is very blocked." She nodded her head calmly, understanding. "I have seen this before." Buddha and Lakshmi both nodded their heads together in agreement. "This blockage can be due to the SJW disease," Buddha said. "This happens when a person begins to use too many labels for their sexuality and identity." Lakshmi explained to everyone there what the SJW disease was. Buddha explained further. This type of blockage can cause sexual confusion and an obsession with sexual identity. Gail's supporter Brad admitted he'd been defining himself with the demisexual label the past few weeks. Lakshmi interjected. "Demisexual is a false label. This is dangerous." All were alarmed that using the demisexual label was dangerous. Buddha now meditated to check Brad's chakras. Everyone now wanted their chakras checked. "You can get the SJW disease from consuming too many internet materials about identity labels," Buddha said. Brad admitted he'd been reading a lot of those. Buddha's meditation and scan on Brad was complete, and he offered his conclusions to Brad. "Your root chakra, too, is blocked. I will need to access your prostate. Do I have your consent?" Brad gave his consent to Buddha. Lakshmi clarified why the demisexual label was dangerous. "The demisexual label is a way for SJWs to be confused about normal romantic connection. Most women fit the definition of demisexual." Buddha's hand began to glow, and he inserted a finger into Brad's anus, which felt warm to Brad. His warm hands moved over Brad's prostate. Lakshmi and Buddha were still in consultation over Gail. "The root chakra blockage in Gail is deep." Lakshmi nodded her head in a bit of dismay, but her eyes lit up with understanding, picking up on Gail's thoughts and feelings. "Gail is not asexual. She is Gail." "What does that mean?" Rule 13 asked. Lakshmi's god body glowed as she used her god powers to scan Gail. "Gail has asexual tendencies, but asexual tendencies are not a label. We must be careful with sexual labels. Sexual labels confuse us about our true self's identity. These labels block our chakras. Sometimes Gail likes sex, and sometimes she doesn't care. This is normal." "The labels also block our root chakra," Buddha clarified, while stimulating Brad's prostate and milking the semen from it, causing Brad to have a prostate orgasm and ejaculate. Brad's root chakra is clearing. Buddha pulled his glowing fingers from Brad's anus. Brad joked that they would need to send in the cleanup crew. "Gail-chan," Rule 13 said, "is it okay if Buddha insert his glow fist into your anal area?" Gail agreed it was okay. Buddha's glowing fist entered Gail's anus, and Gail barely felt anything. Perhaps Buddha gave her an anesthetic. "I'm jealous," Brent said. "I would love to get fisted by Buddha." As Buddha's glowing fist went in and out of Gail's anus, when his fist retracted, a burst of light made the room glow, with the glow in intervals depending on when his fist was retracted. "I will look at Brent next. I'm finding major blockages in Gail. He removed an INFP blockage. All at Church of Gail saw Buddha, Lakshmi, Brent Spiner, and their actions as they viewed Gail on the cameras. But Gail herself saw none of this, because this was in another dimension away from the dimension she was able to perceive. Though Brent lived in Gail's apartment with her, Gail never saw Brent or his furniture in her apartment, which existed in another dimension she could not perceive. Buddha pulled out the booklet, Ethical Slut, from Gail. Gail thought it strange that the INFP label came out of her, because she had not been thinking about the Myers-Briggs INFP label for a while. But apparently the INFP blockage was there because she was reading the INFJ writer book, which had sections in it for INFPs considered similar to INFJs. By removing this, Buddha explained, Gail will not be obsessed with this label. Buddha pulled his glowing fist out, his eyes concentrating. Gail still has another root chakra hole. Buddha insinuated he had more work to do, referring to Gail's vagina. Do I have your permission to put my fist into Gail's vagina? Buddha asked Brent, Gail's husband. Brent gave Buddha permission. I'm a gynecologist, so I understand. Sometimes a man has to put his hands in your woman's vagina for her health. Buddha inserted his glowing fist into Gail's vagina. Gail barely felt anything. She must have been numbed out. Buddha smiled and asked Gail a question. Has your vagina been purring lately? What? Gail thought. Buddha made a jerk with his fist inside Gail's vagina as if he caught something and grabbed it. There is something furry inside, but fur should not be inside a vagina unless it is a trans-neo-vagina. A trans-neo-vagina is a vagina created in a man who has decided to be a woman. The man cuts his penis inverting it and uses the inverted penis to make a vagina whole. But sometimes the man's pubic hair remains, and that hair is then inside the new vagina. I have to save the cat, Buddha said, while jerking at something inside Gail's vagina to pull it out, and a kitten was coming out. It is a cat! Rule 13's eyes opened wide in astonishment. Gail knew she'd been obsessed with her writing instruction book, Save the Cat, to help her find themes for her writing and to improve her writing for the Gail series. How can there be a cat in my vagina? This is more likely than you think, Buddha said. Buddha totally removed the cat, which was a kitten-size energy blockage cat. There is some catnip on Gail's cervix. Who put that there? Gail asked. Someone must have put energy catnip inside to attract an energy blockage cat, Rule 13 concluded. It is whoever caused the root chakra blockage. Buddha pulled out mental illness labels, books, internet articles, an orange kitten, the cat on the title to Save the Cat is orange, YouTube videos about mental illnesses, sexual identities, writing methodologies, etc. Brent was concerned. Does this mean when I have sex with Gail, I'm fucking the cat too? Buddha smiled, petting the kitten. The cat has been saved. He spoke to the kitten. You don't need to be saved anymore. How did this happen? Gail asked. Buddha turned to Brent. He placed the kitten in Brent's arms like a baby. Now I must heal Brent too. He has a blockage in his root and third eye chakra. I have to put my hand on Brent's penis and my tongue in his mouth to access his third eye, and I'll have to go deep. Buddha put his glowing hand on Brent's penis. No homo. His tongue entered Brent's mouth. Buddha milked Brent's penis with his hand, and Brent ejaculated gallons, while Buddha had his tongue in Brent's mouth. Brent's 18.5-inch erect penis lay flat on Brent's chest and ejaculated onto Brent's chest while shooting semen into Brent's mouth and eye. The kitten purred and licked the semen from Brent's chest. But Buddha remained rather stoic in his demeanor, despite the semen mess, while everyone seemed on edge, his tongue remaining in Brent's mouth. Buddha pulled his tongue out. I have cleaned the third eye and root chakra in Brent. Buddha waved his hand as a gesture. Now look, Brent. What do you see? Brent's eyes spinned in his head, viewing Gail's apartment where he lived with her. There are hoof prints all over a Save the Cat book, and one all over a book called INFJ Writer. Looking about Gail's apartment, Brent's eyes opened wide in horror. There are hoof prints all over the apartment. All understood that Baphomet had been in Gail's apartment again. This was a plot to destroy the book series Gail has been working on by ruining it with writing cliché, Buddha said. Are the stories I've written thus far okay? Gail asked. We'll have to closely review the stories now to make sure. What about the past stories? If Gail followed the instructional writing books, she would lose her gift of intuitive writing that is so special to Jesus, Buddha said. Jesus' vision for the series was a Gail biography, not fiction. Therefore, fiction writing is incompatible with Jesus' vision. I made a copy of the INFJ Writer and Save the Cat Writes a Novel for my computer. Should I delete them? Gail decided to retain the copy she made of both instructional books on her computer because it was so much work, but never reads them. She hopes that when she's finished with the Gail series, it might be safe to read them later, perhaps, if she does a fiction project. The kitten pregnancy caused Gail's obsession with transcribing whole writing instructional books, Buddha said. Baphomet was the one who inserted the catnip and kitten into Gail's vagina. Apparently, Gail gave Baphomet an open door by becoming obsessed with the labels. Buddha clarified why obsession with labels was dangerous. We must avoid activities that contaminate the root chakra. What are those? Gail asked. Identity labels, especially sexual labels, give Baphomet power over people, Buddha said. These labels take away their true individuality and make them boring. What about what I've written thus far? Brent will need to review the books again with a fresh third eye chakra to see, Buddha clarified. Gail has been off her path. The book should be an autobiography of what really happened. Gail does not need to learn how to write her own life story. Obsession with how to write will block her chakras, and she could get energy blockage kittens in her vagina again. I'm kind of scared to write now, because I need feedback on what I've done thus far to know exactly where I've exactly gone off the path. Brent and Zach will help review what has been done thus far, Buddha said. No more writer books. Write from the heart. Brent also noticed hoof prints on Ethical Slut, another book Gail had read which was about polyamory. Gail would remove this book from her computer. Books about identity labels can block the root chakra, Buddha said. Obsession with labels are a good sign Baphomet has done something. He tempts humans with labels which let him in, mental illness labels included. Gail wanted clarity about how to write. Write short stories of autobiography that are true, Buddha said. The stories should present real events from the past, like a photograph. They should present Gail as she felt and believed at the time that they happened. Intuitive guessing is good, Buddha clarified. The problem is trying to insert rules for writing fiction into a story that is non-fiction. Buddha seemed to be pondering. Perhaps Gail does not feel her work would be accepted if she wrote from the heart. She needs to stop worrying about trying to please others and focus on the story in her own words. Her writing is too unique to be put in a box. Elaborate on writing from the heart. Gail was now scared to write. Simply write what you feel you should write, without second guessing if you wrote it correctly according to someone else's standards. For example, your writing does not need to adhere to Save the Cat rules. Zach Knight thought it would be fun to make the goddess Lakshmi pregnant and flirted with Lakshmi. Zach, you're wasting your time, Gail said to Zach. Lakshmi is very monogamous and would definitely not be interested. Gail recalled her conversations with Lakshmi in May 2022. Not even a little bit, the goddess Lakshmi said with firm certainty. I am not like my mom. You can't do the same thing to me, Lakshmi smiled. My mom still asks about Zach. Gail commented about how her addiction to labels seemed to confuse her about how to write and be. We shouldn't label our behaviors as if they define us, Lakshmi said. The more labels we attach to ourselves, the more we block who we really are. None of us is a sexuality or a mental illness. Lakshmi clarified further. There were times in Gail's life when her thoughts, beliefs, and feelings were very different. She has not been the same person her whole life, and should not be ashamed of her growth. For instance, there was a time that she embraced the marriage list, but she decided later it no longer served her. So this was an important time of growth for Gail, because she gave up her need to have backups of things she feared losing. Lakshmi's demeanor was kind and calm. Her 4 arms about her slim body graced a beautiful face with long streaming brown hair. Gail still struggles with this, but tries to better herself all the time. Lakshmi smiled. That makes her a hero. Thank you, Lakshmi, Gail said. Gail's hoarding of duplicate or bulk items was a symptom of this too, Lakshmi said. Gail has a fear of scarcity. Lakshmi, why do I have a tendency to use labels? It's from a lack of identity that some humans develop as children, when they're too afraid to be who they really are or to be vulnerable, so they pretend to be things they are not, to impress the world and feel adequate. How did Brent's root chakra get blocked? Gail asked. Buddha offered his insights. Baphomet was in the apartment and able to get Brent too. So Baphomet got in because of all the labels I was using? Gail asked. Yes, Buddha said. And when Brent had sex in your vagina with the cat in there, he got energy cat dander on the head of his penis. It was like an STD. He was ejaculating cat semen into your vagina, which could have filled you with kittens. Fortunately, it did not get that bad. You were close. How did he get cat semen? Gail asked. It is from getting the cat dander inside his penis. The dander went to his testicles, and his testicles turned the dander into cat semen. Buddha was aware that abortions were done on Gail regularly to prevent pregnancy because Brent and Gail used satellite technology to sort of do a morning after deal because of all the other dimensional unprotected sex they had together. Though Gail was in menopause, Jesuits had the ability to induce pregnancy in menopausal women. You cannot abort energy kitten blockages, Buddha explained, which was why the abortions didn't work on the energy blockage cat. You must clean the chakras. Buddha commented about how this affected Jesus' semen, which was in one of Brent's testicles. The kitten blockage temporarily blocked Jesus' semen. So Brent thought he was ejaculating Jesus' semen and was tricked? Gail asked. He could not see properly because of the third eye blockage, Buddha said. Brent still saw Gail as drop-dead gorgeous future Gail despite the third eye chakra damage, which may be why he was not aware he had third eye chakra damage. Gail decided she might go to the botanical gardens to revitalize her chakras, and Buddha gave 2 thumbs up. Fresh experiences will rejuvenate the chakras. Buddha and Lakshmi left the hangout and both said they had a good time. Gail seems to have a real hard time learning that she is not a label, and seems to have a real need to put on shoes that don't quite fit her feet. You'd think after Buddha corrected her in August 22 and then again in September 2023 she'd get it. But a whole lifetime of feeling unworthy is apparently hard to undo. Back in August 2022, the Gail Shield dropped to 70% when it was normally in the 90s, and Brent was concerned. The Gail Shield is an extension of Jesus and protects Gail from Jesuit attacks and from attacks by evil beings. We've noticed changes in the Gail Shield. It's been losing power, despite all of us doing the Gail Commandments, Brent said to Gail on August 2, 2022. The last scan showed it at 70% power. We've had our teams investigating. Buddha walked into Gail's apartment while Gail and Brent discussed possibilities for why the Gail Shield was weakening. Buddha laid out a lot of records and evidence for Brent to see. Some of the evidence had pictures of Baphomet. Namaste. Our investigation is complete, and we have definitely found our culprit, Buddha said. Brent's eyes opened wide at the evidence and saw pictures of Baphomet that Gail could not see glaring from the SJW pages of Gail's website. He's showing me a bunch of records and evidence. Wow, this is a doozy. Buddha offered his insights. I don't know if Jesus ever mentioned this to you both, but one big thing that upsets him is labels or humans putting themselves into boxes. This is part of why SJWs are so obnoxious. Gail had loaded her website in July 2022 with one post after another about how she was finding herself as a demisexual and an asexual style person and was hoping to help others find their true selves. It seems the biggest SJW demon we know, Baphomet, has influenced Gail to overwhelm her website with SJW articles encouraging people to box themselves into sexuality labels, Buddha said. The more people convert to these labels and begin defining themselves this way, the weaker the Gail shield becomes. It seemed impossible to not be tricked by Baphomet. So what do I do? Well, we'll have to clear up the demonic influence causing you to obsess over labels. Let's check your symptoms. What labels have you been defining yourself as? Polyamorous demisexual, Gail said. Gail was surprised to hear she was in trouble over the SJW labels in August 2022 because it seemed to her that the goddess Lakshmi in May 2022 got her started in this direction. I see, Buddha said. This is definitely not good. That's as SJW as it gets. Buddha began concentrating. Let me meditate and see if I can balance your chakras, Gail. May I? Please do. Buddha's meditation was able to balance Gail's chakras in 3 minutes. Meditation complete. Your chakras are tuned up and in good working order. During meditation, I sensed some worry and confusion regarding your identity and Jesus. Gail was still trying to grasp the new Jesus, who had left Earth in mid-June 2022 to be pure existence, and Gail wasn't sure how to please him in his new state. It may be helpful to know that when Jesus said he was aromantic and asexual, he wasn't referring to the SJW definitions of the words. He was merely trying to communicate that his true self has no desire for romance or sex of any kind. That's the type of deity he is, Buddha said. In addition, he has no need for emotional connection with specific individuals, because he is the universe itself. It would be like saying you seek a deeper connection with your arm or leg. Those body parts are you, so there is no need. Buddha tried to clear up Gail's confusion. Part of his apology to you late April 2022 was regarding the fact that he pretended to want a romantic or sexual connection with you because it was part of his act of being a cool, hip human. He was going through all the motions that he thought would make humans accept him. It would take a while for Gail to grasp this. She was so used to remembering Jesus as being so relatable and human-like. It was only 8 months ago that Jesus was the party guy, even doing sex parties with humans. And of course, Jesus was also Gail's roommate from late January to late March 2022. Jesus apologized to Gail in late April 2022, admitting that he only used her as a sex dummy and was not in love with her. She knew this the whole time, actually, but was still confused about how to see Jesus. Buddha clarified further so that Gail would understand that Jesus would not want her to try and exactly emulate who Jesus was as a being. When he says he made man in his image, what he means is that he made humans to be what he enjoys them to be, his image of them, not that they have to be exactly like him to be good. Jesus wouldn't want humans to all be aromantic or asexual individuals, for instance. He wants them to express their individual uniqueness. Gail needed to reorient herself to the new, more authentic Jesus. And being a big-picture thinker, wanted clarity about the big picture. Why is Satan so obsessed with Jesus? Does Jesus still have six-pack abs? Satan has long-standing grudges against Jesus. It's not meant to be shared at this time. Yes, Jesus still has six-pack abs in his human form. Buddha wanted to stay on the main topic. On another note, regarding these SJW labels, none of them are really real. Most human women prefer an emotional attraction or connection before they feel sexually attracted to a man. Human men, on the other hand, are usually physically attracted first and emotionally attracted later. The demisexual label was a way for SJWs without a sense of identity to feel special, even though they are just normal humans. This is very insightful, Gail said. It's also quite common for human sexual preferences to change over time. The young ones are quite horny, but as humans get older, they tend to value companionship and connection more than sex. Gail did recall feeling a lot hornier when she was younger, though she did a fine job of keeping it under wraps to fit into her ideal image of herself as the monogamous Victorian church wife. The goddess Lakshmi in May 2022 got me curious about the labels, because she uses them for her practice. Buddha could see that his friend, the Hindu goddess Lakshmi, got Gail's curiosity going about the SJW labels. Yes, she's quite smart about these things. She knows more than I do in that area. One thing I know is that the labels are meant to generalize certain behaviors, not necessarily section people off into boxes. The labels Lakshmi used to enlighten Gail about herself were meant to generalize certain behaviors. Now that made sense to Gail. But Gail would need to keep reminding herself of this wise advice because she had a real obsession to bury her true self and lose herself into a label because she was scared to find out who she really was, fearing rejection from those who mattered. Buddha clarified. For instance, a man may say he is heterosexual. However, one day he may happen to meet another very special man who he falls in love with. Does this make him gay? Not necessarily. He is just more than a label. He is a unique individual. Wow! So even the label homosexual was just that, a label. This would take a while to sink into Gail. So gays didn't really need to go on gay pride marches and stuff like that. It seemed everyone needed to chill about all these SJW labels. And perhaps the evangelical Christians also needed to chill about a man who thought he was in love with another man. Buddha continued. This is why the labels, like asexuality, seem to contradict themselves at times. It's because people are all unique, and the labels aren't meant to specifically box them in. But Gail was not a bigot and very accepting of all types. Why is Satan so obsessed with me? Satan is against you, because you are a powerful threat to his control of the world. Actually, Gail hated politics. Great, she thought. So Satan will never give up on me because he's obsessed with politics and I just happen to be in his way. Why does Satan care about controlling this little planet called Earth? It's nothing compared to the multiverse. Satan is very petty, Buddha explained. Earth is Jesus' favorite planet. Satan wanted Earth just to make Jesus miserable? Boy, he was petty. He certainly is petty if that's his motivation. He seems to enjoy making Jesus miserable. Gail had to fix her mistakes and decided to revamp her website and her writing to downplay the SJW labels. She planned to change the titles to her July 2022 website posts to give Baphomet credit for his ideas, and would make the sites into comedy parodies of Baphomet's ideas, giving Baphomet full credit for the ideas he planted in her head. Buddha was happy over Gail's response. This will be good. The SJW ideology is like a cancer in your species. Baphomet is obsessed with it. It seems the new influx of Jesuits are SJWs. You have high emotional intelligence, Buddha, Gail said. You are great at communicating. It is an honor to have you on our team. Jesus had good judgment to pick you. Buddha smiled graciously. Thank you. I enjoy communicating and giving clarity to humans. I think it's funny that you rejected the 8-pack abs Jesus gave you. That's hilarious. Gail actually could care less about hot abs. I like you. Jesus gave Buddha an 8-pack during the Battle of the Gods in Easter 2022. Satan always taunted Buddha about his full belly, But Buddha reinstated his full belly later. "I like my Buddha belly," Buddha smiled. "Yeah, that's who you are. You need to be true to yourself," Gail chuckled. "So the part about us being true to ourselves is cool. We just need to get away from the labels. We also need to be aware that who we are can evolve over time." Excellent. You got it. Yeah, Gail got it in August 2022, and then she would forget, and that's part of why she was writing this story. Deeply ingrained habits and overcompensations for being in an identity flux can be hard to overcome. She still wanted to see the big picture to help her find her way forward. Does Satan have a sex addiction, or is that another bad label? Satan doesn't have a sex addiction. He just likes to be lewd and offend people. Can you clarify what is his main motivation in his power grab for Earth? Why can't this fallen angel just be happy as the angel he once was? He had it so good back then. He thinks his ways are the best ways, and that he can run Earth better than Jesus. God forbid if Satan ever totally ran Earth, Gail thought. He was awful, not cool like Jesus. Why does Satan like to be lewd and offend people? He enjoys the attention it gives him. He also feeds off of people's negative emotions, which makes him stronger. What interesting insights. Negative emotions make him stronger? Is he the lead behind all the negative forces in the universe? Buddha nodded his head yes. Yep, he is. So, this universe was a paradise until Satan decided to rebel. That's pretty major. Gail knew she probably shouldn't feel this way. But knowing this about Satan, she wanted to blow him up into a million pieces. He was causing so much unnecessary suffering. He is quite the asshole. Buddha decided things were sorted out and left the conversation to have tea and head back to Church of Gail. He made himself a portal to the church and walked inside, closing it to leave. On April 11th, 2024, as Gail researched for her Gail series, she became mesmerized with the asexual label again. When she learned new things about asexuality and about being asexual from YouTube videos that really resonated with her. She started becoming obsessed with learning more about how asexuals feel about asexual, to the point that she decided she wanted to buy a black ring for her right hand's middle finger to declare herself asexual. All she could think of on April 11, 2024, was how happy she was that, thus far, she had kept Baphomet and Shakpona from entering her apartment to kill Brent. She'd completely forgotten most of the advice she got from Buddha and Lakshmi about labels, and was just determined to write the Gail series to show she wasn't on the side of these vile beasts, forgetting that Baphomet is the SJW demon. Baphomet's attacks on Brent in November 2023 and January 2024 exposed Baphomet as a vile murderer and rapist, and Gail forgot that this murdering rapist was also a fanatical SJW. In fact, her obsession with labels had already infected one of her stories about Melania Trump, where Gail was labeling Melania as aromantic and full sexual and going to town with those labels. So she got the SJW disease again, it seems, when she started searching online to find a black ring for her right hand's middle finger in the early evening hours of April 11, 2024, to let the world know she was asexual. In her thought processes as she worked on her writing, she was again embracing the SJW labels, telling herself that she wasn't doing this. This must have given Baphomet an open door to begin his obsessive work on Gail. But then, she gave up on the idea of getting an asexual ring for her finger, deciding it was a dumb idea. But she got so distracted by her obsession to possibly buy this asexual ring from a local store that she'd laid her potholder down somewhere and neglected the kitchen and cooking to search online for a store where she could buy the asexual ring. She wanted the ring to look like an asexual black ring and was having a hard time finding just the right ring while searching obsessively online. The possibility of buying an asexual flag also intrigued her, and she did a bit of a search on that, but abandoned that idea because those were hard to find at a local store, and she'd never order anything online again, like happened before when Baphomet almost killed Brent over online orders she had made November 2023 and January 2024. Finally, After deciding not to buy the ring April 11, 2024, concluding it was a dumb idea, she decided to do the dishes and finally clean up the kitchen. Hey, but now she noticed she only had 2 potholders. What happened to her 3rd potholder? She always had 3 potholders. She scoured her apartment to see if Jesuit brain control caused her to leave it in a strange place. After an hour of frantic searching, she could find it nowhere. It was gone. In a panic, she decided perhaps Baphomet took it. It reminded her of the time she scoured through her garbage can in mid-January 2024 and couldn't find the thermometers she'd thrown in there when Zach suggested she fling them out the door and into the hallway to stop Baphomet and Shakpona from killing and spit roasting her husband Brent on her bed. Oh no! Perhaps Baphomet took the potholder, like he did the thermometers when he and Shakpona were raping Brent in mid-January 2024. She had bought an extra duplicate thermometer after Shakpona manipulated her to become obsessed with her bodily temperature, tricking her into thinking she had the flu and that her current thermometer was broken. Buying the thermometer duplicate was a violation of a Gail commandment. The thermometers ended up in Brent's anus because Baphomet gave Gail an obsession about her bodily temperature, and Baphomet had transported the thermometers from the garbage can to Brent's anus while he and Shakpona were raping Brent, now making it impossible for her to rid herself of the powerfully cursed duplicate thermometer. But moving forward to April 12, 2022, nobody knew where that 3rd potholder went. Rule 13 said it wasn't at Church of Gail on April 12, 2024. Brent apparently didn't have it in his anus like it happened to the thermometers 3 months before. Besides, Gail wasn't obsessed or hoarding anything that had anything to do with potholders. And she didn't have a fear scarcity mindset about her potholders. She'd had these potholders for over 10 years and used all 3 of the potholders regularly, so it really wasn't a Gail Commandments duplicate items violation. But she decided not to buy another potholder regardless, since she could get along with 2 and could just use a dish rag as a substitute potholder if need be. She was afraid if she bought another one, it would be under a Baphomet curse and possibly put her under some sort of spell. But who took the potholder from her apartment and why? Finally, after meditating around 2 in the morning, she thought, how strange that this potholder just vanished in thin air. But when did it vanish? When it vanished seemed to be key. It vanished when she was obsessively searching online to find a store where she could buy a ring to announce to the world she was asexual and to show that ring on a YouTube video as a symbol of pride, owning her asexuality. After meditation, she decided that perhaps Buddha took the potholder as a hint, reminding Gail that it disappeared when she became obsessed with the asexual label. She rummaged through her transcripts of past conversations with Buddha and decided that was it. Better that Buddha was the culprit and not Baphomet. The timing of when she lost the potholder was key. It happened when she lost track of time on the computer, obsessing about being asexual and trying to find a way to own and announce the asexual label for herself with pride. Regardless, she does not plan to buy any more potholders until it becomes absolutely necessary, and she also plans to completely abandon the asexual label as a way to describe herself. Asexual leaning, yes, but Gail is not asexual. Gail is Gail. Gail only hopes that as a result of telling this true story, others will learn faster than herself to not use labels on themselves and can spare themselves from things mysteriously missing from their homes as they give way to SJW label obsessions. She still hasn't found that potholder and thinks perhaps she never will. Buddha apparently wants this lesson about not obsessing over labels to stick, and perhaps wants others to learn from Gail's mistakes. Oh well, she can always buy another potholder when she needs to. And she needed to remind herself of what Buddha told her in August 2022, that Jesus would not want us trying to be him as the totally asexual and aromantic pure existence that he is. It would be kind of hard to be the entire multiverse anyways. He wants us all to be the unique individuals that we are and not try to be a label. So Gail was beginning to grasp that Jesus was the multiverse himself. Gail envisioned the multiverse as a huge living body. That living body was Jesus. When humans, deities, or beings got off their path and fed the evil forces, Jesus felt that like a cancer in his body. So the focus for Jesus now was not to be worshipped. In fact, he discouraged that in Gail because it led to identity problems for her and idolatry, which was devil worship. All forms of idolatry are devil worship, Jesus said to Gail in October 2012. This would include worshiping a false view of Jesus, which may be why Jesus was discouraging worship of himself right now. Like all of us, Jesus wanted to be healthy. The multiverse is his body. He doesn't like being sick. Jesus no longer has a need for romance, connection, and all the things that may matter to us, who are the cells and/or organs in his body. We care about connection because we are cells, and cells need each other and have to work together to have a good place to exist. But Jesus, being the whole body, doesn't have to worry about connection with parts of himself. He's not a cell or organ. He is the entire body. The cells would be the humans, and the organs would perhaps be the deities, and then lesser beings like animals and insects would be parts of the cells. When the cells do bad things like feed the evil forces, Jesus starts feeling sick. Kind of like how Jesus got a thready pulse and started sweating in his April 2022 coma when very important cell Gail was acting on malignant cancer cell Baphomet's suggestions to Gail's mind. Gail is a pretty important cell in his body apparently, and when she does things that make Jesus feel sick, her Gail shield, an extension of Jesus, weakens. So it appears Jesus and his dad, God the Father, are two humongous bodies melding together to be the multiverse itself in all of its scenarios. We, being parts of that body, are the cells and organs and parts of those scenarios. The cells and organs, us, are the created beings in the bodies of Jesus and his dad. You can't create something from nothing, so it makes sense that we would be part of Jesus and his dad's body. Jesus is totally aromantic and asexual, but not at all in the way SJWs describe what those terms mean. Jesus is definitely not like how SJWs describe what those terms mean. The SJW demon Baphomet is a very sick, malignant cancer cell in Jesus' body and spreading a lot of cancerous toxins into Jesus' body that make Jesus feel ill. Why doesn't Jesus do chemotherapy in his body and eliminate Baphomet? Perhaps that malignant cancer cell will get right down the road. Who knows? The point is, we gotta quit seeing Jesus as a deity. He is now pure existence, the literal body of the multiverse, and doesn't give a hoot about being worshipped anymore. In fact, he discourages it, lest we feed idolatry, devil worship, and identity crises and other problems that make him feel sick. Gail loves worshiping Jesus as a deity. That has been her default mode. She has a need to worship her idols to feel better about herself. But the best way to make pure existence Jesus happy from June 2022 forward is to do those things that keep him healthy. When we are healthy, Jesus is healthy. A body can only be healthy with healthy cells. Jesus is a lot like his dad, God the Father, now. Jesus and his dad, the two bodies that make up the multiverse, do seem to have different preferences, like we all do. For instance, God the Father has a deity wife who is Jesus' mother. Jesus, having found himself as a totally aromantic and asexual pure existence multiverse itself, only cares about being healthy. He was very unhealthy when he was in that coma in early April 2022, that was for sure. Jesus has zero need for connection with the cells in his own body in his current, totally aware of who he is, and much healthier and truly authentic state. Jesus just has different preferences from his dad, which explains why his dad has a deity wife and Jesus does not. But they are both the multiverse itself, and both are infallible and perfect and good. Perhaps God the Father created Jesus, an obvious extension of himself as we all are, since we are all parts of the multiverse, to introduce more variety into his multiverse. Jesus has been equal to his dad since June 2022. The plan seems to be to keep the variety, but to make it all good and pure and loving. while still being interesting and of many different and colorful variations. We just have to keep faith in the two humongous bodies, Jesus and God, merged and working together, running the whole shebang. When we lose that faith by believing we are born bad or have doubts and fear that the universe could be run on evil, we feed the evil forces. That's why we need to meditate and keep our peace and thankfulness and live thankfully in the moment. We stay in tune with the goodness and with the plan for all to end up in goodness by meditating, living thankfully in the moment, and doing the Gail commandments to keep us healthy and so keep Jesus healthy and happy. The best way to find our individual paths is through meditation the way Buddha teaches it. Meditation will give us clarity about who we really are and what our individual path is. Buddha is a master at this and mentored Jesus so that Jesus found himself by meditating with Buddha in early 2022, which caused Jesus to evolve into his true identity, which is pure existence. So what caused me to make those poor decisions as U.S. President? Gail asked Buddha on September 17, 2022. Buddha wearing his orange robe, he was referring to the time when 72 million were killed because I was tricked into believing they were evil death shot promoters. Buddha wearing his orange robe and sandals responded with calm. Bluish and orange tones sparkled on the human-like skin of his god body whenever Buddha used his powers. He had just shown Gail how she had become obsessed with demons by trying to follow the principles in War on the Saints. He corrected her to let her know that there is no such thing as demon possession, though there is such a thing as demon obsession, and then we're in trouble. He was trying to teach Gail how to meditate to help overcome obsessions. Sometimes we all make poor judgments, especially when we act out of fear. This is why meditation is so useful. However, it looks like there have been some bumps off the road of learning proper meditation for Gail. Meditation's purpose is to get rid of fear and obsessive thoughts. Gail always got into trouble when she got scared or obsessed. Gail was confused that the Bible and the Gospels seemed to treat demon possession like it was real. You mean when people had demons removed from them in the New Testament, that never happened? You know, when the apostles and Jesus cast out demons? Buddha clarified how to meditate properly on September 17, 2022. Meditation involves being in the present moment and enjoying oneself. This can be as simple as enjoying a cup of tea by the window. However, a more powerful version of meditation involves getting outside, visiting nature, shops, and seeing new things. New experiences, sights, and fresh activities are a powerful way to be present. It helps ward off negative creatures, even Satan. Here's the truth about why they casted out demons, Buddha said. Sometimes humans develop such strong beliefs, however delusional, that only by someone playing along into those beliefs and pretending to fix the problem will they actually fix the problem. What the medical system calls a placebo. So their obsession with demon possession was fixed by making them believe the demons were gone? Is it safe to read the Bible? Gail asked. The Bible is unsafe right now also. Let us avoid these books for a time, since they will tempt you to think of demons, Satan, or develop false insights about Jesus that he would not want. Buddha clarified more about meditation. I would recommend more frequent outings to rejuvenate your mind and body. Buddhist monks are often associated with sitting and meditating all day, but they used to spend most of their day walking through the woods. Buddha offered Gail advice about how to repel demons. Emotions like anger and revenge are good food for demons. My advice would be to maintain your peace no matter what they do. Otherwise, it is as they say, fighting fire with fire. It only makes the flames bigger. There was a time when humans on Earth were always in nature. Their energy was in harmony with the elements and they were healthy and happy. Christians refer to this time as the Garden of Eden. This is why it is your body's natural instinct to thrive and flourish when you find yourself in nature once again. However, any change or new experience, will shake up the energy within you and recharge your chakras. Thus, visiting local attractions, shops, cafes, or restaurants will have a healing effect on the mind as well. Gail somewhat misunderstood what Buddha said here and thought it meant she had to buy something on her visits and ended up buying duplicates and other items that were a violation of the Gail commandments while going on her new adventures in late 2022 and in 2023. As far as visiting restaurants, the point is to have a new experience which causes you to be present, and it's helpful if it's something you enjoy. So, she could just sit in the restaurant and stare out the window in meditation, and not buy food necessarily, or sip her own tea and water from home while there if she wants. Gail has a good nature view from her window and opens the windows to let the sounds of nature into her apartment when she meditates by her window. Jesus once told us we'd defeat the Jesuits. Is that a far-fetched dream now? Gail asked Buddha. Buddha remained calm, his Asiatic eyes almost in a stoic peace. His full belly seemed a placid lake of joyful composure. I believe you and Brent will defeat the Jesuits. I believe my best friend, Jesus. Oh, that's great. Gail was so confused about the way forward with the Bible canceled. It seems like it never ends. Well, Jesus said the Bible prophecies are canceled. But that prophecy about defeating the Jesuits came from Jesus himself when he spoke to us. Does what Jesus told us personally still count? The one about defeating the Jesuits is definitely true. I guess anything that is related to Bible prophecy, like us being in the future 1,000-year reign, is canceled. That's encouraging to know we'll defeat the Jesuits. Bible prophecies are canceled. He doesn't want anyone to speculate on what will happen next. Whatever happens, everyone will be happy in the end. That's how Jesus is, Buddha said. Gail would learn that every time she speculated and ruminated about Jesus obsessively, all her impressions seemed to come from Baphomet. She always had an obsession to have an idol or religion, and then to lose herself into that idol or religion. Gail did find it hard to believe that Satan could get right in the end. Gail can be a real doubting Thomas at times. I believe that all will return to the one true nature of the universe, which is goodness. Buddha's belief was a direct contradiction to evangelical Christian teaching that men are born sinners or evil, it seemed. In fact, that belief caused Gail to lose herself more into her false identities to try and redeem herself. Perhaps God and Jesus have spared Satan because they know he will turn to good in the end, Buddha said. Perhaps then we will all find out why he was always their favorite angel. Even Laurie McBride turned good, and she was a mega bitch. If Laurie can do it, Satan can.
In a world of secrets, where darkness reigns, there's a warrior rising.